Hello, boys and girls. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about a feast of flesh, women teachers' hunger for underage boys. You know, since the 70s, I remember any of the conversations that would take place about predators and sexual victims. It was always, and I don't mean sometimes, it was always about what men did to women, or rather, what males did to females, because it was really across age. This idea that women were always victims, men were always aggressors. There was no place for any kind of divergence from that. As a matter of fact, the first time I heard about adult female aggressors, I was blown out of my socks because I had no idea it happened. Growing up on a steady diet of TV and movies and even academic classes, I don't think I had actually heard about female predators until graduate school. And I would say it's probably my doctorate, not even my master's, where I started to hear about it. I had experiences with older women, but I didn't really classify anything I experienced personally or just casually as any type of aggression. Right now, it's so frequent that it happens every day. The thing about it, though, is despite how often it happens, there's still not really a collective sense of outrage in regard to what grown women are doing to underage boys on a daily basis. And by the way, that they are also assaulting grown men, but we don't have a conversation about that. So we ignore that entirely. There is at least some acknowledgement of what adult women do to underage boys, and it's frowned upon, at least publicly. But there's no sense of urgency. There's no sense of outrage, not like we've developed when it comes to women and girls. So we can see these kinds of news reports and still remain oblivious to them, most particularly women. Women don't generally get angry about this kind of stuff until it's their sons. That's when you'll see them get angry. But if it's not their sons, they'll just kind of dismiss it, and you'll even hear women having casual conversations all the time. Black women are particularly good at this one. You'll see them on TikTok or X, and they'll look at a picture of a 3-year-old boy or a 10-year-old or hell even a teenager, and they'll say, "Ooh, when when he gets old, ooh, I'm gonna get him. I mean, he can have all of this," and this is somehow considered acceptable. But if you got the 3 or 4 30-plus-year-old men standing around looking at a picture of a 5-year-old girl talking about she could get it, there'll be all kinds of outrage, and appropriately so. But when it's the other way around, we just kind of dismiss it, and we dismiss it because we don't have a sense that women can be aggressors, and we dismiss how dangerous it is. So, first case on the docket, and we're going to look at a few of them, is this Florida woman here, right? This woman is posed as a teenager and sexually abused 5 kids. And her dad said that she's actually the real victim. All right. As you can see here, it said she has a 72 IQ, and that goes into the father's story. But let me go ahead and read an article from AOL.com that breaks this down. Father of a Florida woman who posed on social media sites as a homeschooled teenager before allegedly sexually abusing 5 middle school boys said she is mentally defective and added he is of the belief that his daughter is the true victim in the ongoing criminal case. Josh Zinger told California Post that his daughter, 25-year-old Alyssa Ann Zinger, is mentally defective, even explaining that she once scored a 72 on an intelligence quotient test. Do you know what that means under the law? If somebody's mentally defective and has sex with somebody, no matter their age, it's illegal to have sex with a mentally defective person, Zinger said. In all actuality, she is the victim. An IQ of 72 is considered slightly below the average range of 85 to 115. An IQ below 70 is considered the threshold for intellectually disabled. Father said that Alyssa has been diagnosed with various mental disorders, including ADHD, ADD, OCD, Tourette's syndrome, and anorexia. He also said she was raised in a good Christian home in suburban Tampa. She's had a lot of problems growing up. Our daughter has been to 10 to 12 psychologists and psychiatrists throughout her life. Zinger was arrested in 2023 after authorities alleged that she started posing as a 14-year-old teen on social media and having dozens of sexual encounters with a boy who was between the ages of 12 and 15. Alyssa's dad called the boy a little bastard and accused him of seducing his adult daughter and taking her virginity. Now, what's interesting about this is I've seen similar defenses of women who weren't considered intellectually or mentally disabled, right? The idea, and this has become somewhat of a popular trope when it comes to grown women and underage boys, that somehow the boy is still the predator and the grown woman is still the victim. There's a Jennifer Lopez movie where she plays a grown woman, and I believe she's a teacher, and the next door neighbor, teenager, has a crush on her. They have sex, and then, whatnot. And then she has to spend the movie trying to get away from him and so on and so forth. But it's such a mismatched tone because she's the only adult in the dynamic, right? But this is a popular trope that I see happening with some of these situations where they try to actually position the grown woman as the victim and suggest that the underage boy is the aggressor, right? That's never considered the case in reverse. I do believe there was a movie that I'm blanking on because I haven't actually. I think I may only have seen part of it, but where there was a young woman who was underage, who was kind of the aggressor, trying to seek out this grown man. I want to say it might have had the star from Clueless in it. But again, outside of fiction, you don't really see that translate to real life, where grown men are about to go to court for having violated a student, and then they use the defense that she was the aggressor, even if it's true, right? We act like this can't happen. So anyway, getting back to this, let's say it says that boy found her social media account, found her dancing like a 13-year-old on it, and said, "Hey girl, I'll Uber you to my $5,000 a month apartment. Come on and hang out," the dad said. And then when she got there, she never said she wasn't 14 to him, but he knew her real age and he knew she was mentally unstable. Alyssa posted a number of videos to social media showing her displaying her dance moves. Let me enlarge this because I am not looking at it well. All right. He claimed that the boy had invited Alyssa over to his apartment a number of times over several months and would eventually introduce her to the other four boys she stands accused of sexually abusing. The boy who harbored her in his house for 5 months, he's the one who introduced her to his friends, and they all were like, "Hey, this girl is 14, wink, wink, high five," so on and so forth. "Your turn, bud," Josh said. "There will be no plea deal. There will be no sex offender registry. She'll get time served and adios." He also said that his daughter has been mistreated while in jail. Sounds like a lot of enabling going on the part of the father. But anyway, other inmates, he said, have done things to her food or placed fingernails, hair, it looks like feces in her food, fingernails, hair, and plastic objects in her meals because whoever was making her food knew who she was and they knew that food was going to a pedophile. Alyssa remains in police custody. Her case is scheduled in trial for May. Body cam footage from the police first showed up at her family's home to arrest her shows Josh coming to Alyssa's defense. She got messed up with the wrong kid. Even though he's a lot younger, the father could be heard yelling at the police in the footage. She's never been in trouble in her life. Nothing, but she met a kid, and even though he's young, that's why we're in this situation. She's never been in trouble in her life until she met him. And this kid's insane, right? So that's what we're looking at here, right? That's the defense that they're using for this situation. And this is the Florida woman in question. But let's see. Is it just Florida? What else is going on? All right. So then we got this woman here. This is an article from the NewYorkPost.com dated February 12th of this year. It says New Jersey teacher got pregnant by student she groomed and broke teen's heart by aborting the baby. Okay. Twisted New Jersey teacher who groomed and abused two students ended up getting pregnant by one of the teens, then broke his heart by getting an abortion. It was revealed as she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. So like I said, some of these women actually do get time. A lot of them get a slap on the wrist. But again, there's no public outrage. There's no public sentiment that mirrors the frustration toward the victimization of girls when it happens to boys and men. Now, I did have a few years ago a professor come on my show, a scholar, and he actually talked about sex trafficking as it relates to Black boys. And he was the only one I could find that would do that. And he said the numbers were far more than anybody thinks and really rivaled the girls in terms of that. But there's no public outcry about that for boys in sex trafficking industry, in as much as there's no outrage about it when it happens individually. It's slightly embarrassing as far as women are concerned, but for the most part, there's no collective sensibility about it that reaches the level of fervor that we get to when it comes to girls, right? And the reason I bring up sex trafficking is because that's become one of the hot button items when it comes to violated girls and women. And we act like this doesn't happen to boys. And most of us don't know that it doesn't, that it happens to boys, because it's not something that we see in the news. So when I invited this professor to my channel and he actually discussed the data around it, I had to remove his name a year or two later when he reached out to me. He asked me at first to take the video down. And I said, well, since no one else is putting this information out there, would you mind if I just removed your name from the title? And he said, fine. And the reason was he was having trouble getting jobs. In other words, female women scholars, women, professors at the universities he was applying to were denying his hire because his video was talking about male victims of sex trafficking. So the video is still there, but I had to remove his name, but the information is still there. So this happens to boys all the time when it comes to trafficking. We just don't talk about it. But again, that goes back to what I've been saying this whole time. There's no sense of outrage. And I'm going to show you, this is at random. I literally pulled a number of women in about 5 minutes, literally, just to show you how often this happens without the collective outrage that we'll see. We would see if there was a male who was violating a female student, Anyway, so this continues on. She's gotten 10 years in prison. Her name is Julie Rizzatello. She's an English teacher at Wall Township High School in New Jersey, had told one of her victims that she'd gotten pregnant after convincing him to have unprotected sex with her on his birthday. She convinced him. Wow. It was revealed in court on Wednesday. 37-year-old mom later informed the teenager, whom she groomed as a freshman, that she terminated the pregnancy. So she's 37 and she's a mother. And a lot of these women are married with children when they engage in these activities. Not only does he have to deal with the fact that he's groomed throughout his entire high school years, that he's preyed upon by his teacher, who he loved and trusted, that he was sexually abused by his teacher, Monmouth County Judge Jill Grace O'Malley told the hearing of the young victim. This is interesting because I remember a few years ago on Saturday Night Live, they were making fun of the idea of grown women having sex with underage boys. And one of the things they joked about was how this doesn't really happen because grown women can't find boys attractive. And they joked about, they played off of how much acne these boys have, how they don't have their grooming together, their hygiene together. So this whole thing was just kind of a dismissal of the reality of this. And it was, what is her name? I'm looking her up here. Tina Fey. Tina Fey was up there, and this is I don't remember how long ago it was, but I just remember her dismissively joking about how grown women would never find young boys attractive. Meanwhile, on a day-to-day basis, we see event after event after event that suggests that that is not the case. Now, I'm the first to argue that even though sex is a factor, I do believe power is a significant draw when it comes to women in this position. They do love to have power over another person. They love to flex it. I think that's an attractive, one of the features that attracts them to violating boys, because these are boys they have control over. So I do think that's a serious factor. I also have to wonder if this is also a response to men's social withdrawal. I do believe power is a factor. I do believe sexual attraction is a factor. Don't get me wrong. But I have to also wonder, is the shift in the dating environment playing a role in this? Even though on dating apps, women are going to get far more men interested in them than the reverse. And as far as men on dating apps, there's still this kind of sense among women that there are no options. And really what they mean is they don't have access to the men they want, but they have access to plenty of men much of the time, just not the ones that they want. And the way women process often is that if they don't have attraction from the men they want, they just don't have men that are attracted to them. That's why you'll hear women say things like, I just can't find anybody. There's no one out there. No, there's plenty of people out there. You just don't like the options available to you. Whereas many men, unless they're in the top, 8, 9, or 10 range, the top, 20%, they'll often find that they have very few options, even if those options are from subpar, women as far as they're concerned. So it's a very different experience. But women will rationalize why they have few options, and in that respect, I can't help but wonder if that's partially what leads them into violating underage boys. Is it a sense that the men have withdrawn from the space, the dating space, that's made it even more of a vacuum for many women? Who knows? Anyway, it says, but now he's struggling to come to terms with the fact that this individual had an abortion and he wasn't comfortable with it. This is the psychological impact, the devastation. Now, I talked about this some years ago when I was looking at nuns and sexual violation, the sexual violation of underage boys there, because we always talk about priests, and I'm not arguing that that doesn't occur. There's plenty of data about that. But one day I got curious and I just Googled it and started looking up stories about nuns, and apparently there was a wave of these stories about nuns violating underage boys that went back generations, but doesn't seem to make the public conversation. And the thing that made it a little different from when priests violate mostly boys is that these nuns would get pregnant and the Catholic Church would move them to different locations. There was actually a key location, I want to say in Ireland, I think it was, where they sent these pregnant nuns more often than not. And then they found, I want to say they found like a mass grave of aborted, fetuses and so on and so forth. But even if the child lived, what would take place with the underage boys who had been violated is this nun who they'd had a great deal of trust in, had this relationship in, they never saw again. And they never knew what happened to their kid. And some of these men were traumatized into their adulthood because they knew there was a child out there that they never get to see, alongside never getting to see this woman again. And these boys were so young, we're talking 9 through 13 years old. Some of them were saying, and this is obviously pre-internet, so some of these boys were so young, they didn't know what sex was. They thought that the way you got a woman pregnant is through kissing. I remember one of the young men saying, so this is something that has happened quite a bit in the past, but there's no public discourse for. You can find some data on it, but you'll find that there are very few classes and universities that are talking about female aggressors in different contexts. You don't even see a lot of it on social media, right? So it continues. The disgraced teacher who pleaded guilty last year to 2 counts of second-degree sexual assault abused each of her victims for months at a time. The first boy with whom she got pregnant was a freshman when she started grooming him in 2017. She told him she dreamed of having sex with him, which they then did multiple times in 2017 and 2018. So she was having sex with him in his freshman year. Wow. This is grooming. It is traditional grooming that I see every week here in this courthouse. This is the behavior of a standard sexual predator. You are no different, the judge told the teacher. Rizzatello also targeted another boy, an 18-year-old student, in early 2024. The sex pest teacher copped to having sex with both boys at her home, in parking lots, and even at her family-owned bagel shop where the 2 victims worked. Wow. So she had them working at her family-owned bagel shop and had sex with them there. When the teacher kept interrupting to deny being a groomer, the judge snapped, "Stop shaking your head. These are the facts." After Rizzatello was arrested in July 2024, prosecutors said she contacted both victims and asked that they scrub their phones and devices of any evidence. Wow. These crimes were not isolated incidents constituting moments of poor judgment. They were textbook cases of grooming involving a defendant who repeatedly leveraged tactics of isolation, manipulation, and control for the sake of her own selfish purposes, according to the county prosecutor. Wow. This is a trip. This is a trip. The egregious nature of the conduct was further compounded by the plain fact that the emotional and psychological harm she inflicted came at the expense of 2 of the very same young minds she had been entrusted to develop and nurture. Now, this is interesting, too. When they said she's shaking her head and she's arguing with the judge about whether or not she's even a predator, when men do that kind of thing, there's frustration, there's rage, in fact. When men who are caught or accused of this, try to deny that they're predators, there's rage. But when a woman does it, the judge, thankfully, was enraged. But is there public outrage in the same sense? No, I highly doubt it. So the next one on the docket, you can see here, this is a woman from Wisconsin, right? Teacher's aide who sexually assaulted student during sleepover, sentenced to more than 50 years. Anna Marie Crocker pleaded guilty to sexual assault and other child sex abuse charges. All right, Wisconsin's teacher's aide, so she wasn't even a teacher, she was a teacher's aide, was sentenced to 50 years in prison after she pled guilty to sexually assaulting a child. In December, Anna Marie Crocker admitted to several charges, including first-degree sexual assault, child sexual exploitation, filming is what that apparently meant, child enticement, and second-degree sexual assault of a child, the Kenosha County District Attorney said. The guilty pleas came a year after she was accused of sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy who was at her house with a group of friends for a sleepover. According to criminal complaint, a naked Crocker woke the boy, removed his pants, and sexually assaulted him. The boy told police that he tried to get Crocker to stop and attempted to push her off, but that she refused. The boy said Crocker texted him for months after the incident, trying to apologize for what happened, and said she was trying to make him feel guilty, according to the complaint. Authorities also discovered that another boy accused Crocker of sexually assaulting him and exchanging sexual messages and pictures with him, per the complaint. In total, Crocker sexually abused 4 different boys. She worked at an elementary school, was fired from her job in October 2024. On Tuesday, February 17th, she was sentenced to more than 51 years in prison. This case represents a profound breach of trust, according to the district attorney, Xavier Salas. When an adult connected to our schools exploits our children, the harm is severe and lasting. She reportedly says she took full responsibility. She's disturbed by the harm and distress. Look, this is ridiculous. But this is what's going on, right? So this woman got 51 years, violated several boys, even one that was trying to fight her off, right? Women as a whole, however, will still deny that this happens altogether. They'll still deny, really just casually speaking, and they'll put all the onus on men. Here's another, right? Married high school gym teacher charged with sexually assaulting student. Can't believe I'm going to do this is the quote. All right. So this is dated March 2nd. I'm reading from the New York Post. And it reads, this physical education got disturbingly hands-on. A married high school PE teacher has been charged with sexually assaulting a student whom she admits sexting and kissing, but denies ever getting fully physical with. Alicia Krenz, 39, started sending flirty messages to the boy when he was in her sophomore class at Ponagansett High School in Gloucester, Rhode Island, after she found his number online. Let's see here. She eventually sent him naked pics and videos and kissed him twice, including once while straddling him sexually in the back of his car, the teen said. When quizzed by cops, the married teacher admitted sending the X-rated pics as well as having kissed the boy, but insisted that they were never physical, despite locking lips and openly discussing plans to have sex. Teacher's flirting started with her saying the boy looked good and creepily asked to wear his sweatshirt before she teasingly asked him what he would buy her for her birthday. Krenz proceeded to ask him for a kiss and gave him her address in Cranston, jumping in when he arrived and parked on the side of the street. She says, I can't believe I'm going to do this. You can't tell anybody, Krenz allegedly said before grabbing the teen's face and kissing him for nearly 15 minutes. For the next few days, the PE teacher bombarded the boy with flattering texts about what a good kisser he was and how she couldn't stop thinking about his lips. She then invited him back over weeks later when she straddled the student in the back seat and engaged in sexual contact with him while kissing. The student showed police several racy photos and videos of Krenz in lingerie that she sent him when he was just 17. Teacher also sent him nude photos and videos of herself once he turned 18, which she admitted. They both told investigators that they had discussed having sex but never did. The teacher also told investigators that she eventually asked the student to stop messaging her due to her being his teacher as well as being married. So it looks like she supposedly changed her mind at a certain point. The student, who graduated last spring, filed a formal complaint against Krenz with Rhode Island State Police back in October, triggering a criminal investigation. Krenz was charged Friday with 2 counts of third-degree sexual assault. She's scheduled to be arraigned March 18th. The superintendent of the school said in October that Krenz was no longer employed with the district. So it's looking like she changed her mind, shut everything down, and it pissed him off. And it looks like he may have, done this in retribution. But again, you're dealing with an underage individual. So you're not dealing with an adult who's going out there and attacking you back for having done something. You're dealing with an underage individual who it looks like you've thoroughly pissed off by rejecting him, and that's how you responded. One could argue that there's an emotional instability when it comes to underage folk who are sexually violated, and that's part of the reason that there are laws against adults violating underage individuals. They're not developed yet, emotionally and physically for that matter, let alone neurologically. But anyway, so here's another, right? Because this keeps happening and there's little attention to it. This is in South Jersey. Elementary school teacher accused of having sexual relationship and child with a student. All right, here we go. Authorities allege the victim was 13 years old and living with the then 28-year-old suspect when their child was born in 2019. This is in Middle TWP, New Jersey. Middle Township elementary school teacher in South Jersey is facing charges after she allegedly had a child with a student she's accused of sexually assaulting inside her home several years ago. Laura Karen, 34, of Cape May Courthouse, was arrested on Wednesday on charges of aggravated sexual assault, and endangering the welfare of a child. The alleged crimes happened between 2016 and 2020 at the suspect's home in Cape May Courthouse. This is on Channel 6 ABC Action News or 6abc.com. You can find this, and this is dated January 15th, 2025. So this is last year, right? Authorities say the victim was 13 years old and living with the then 28-year-old Karen when their child was born in 2019. The case was brought to light when the victim's father made a social media post in December 2024 saying Karen's 5-year-old child looked very similar to him and his son. Authorities say Karen taught the victim and his brother in the 5th grade. Over the years, the parents of the victim said the family became friends with Karen, which ultimately led them to even allowing their boys and daughter to stay at Karen's home at times. The visits began 1 to 2 nights a week, but the children stayed with Karen permanently. Wow, from 2016 to 2020, authorities revealed in court documents. What parents let their kids move in with their teacher? I mean, even if you don't suspect anything's going wrong, that's weird. Anyway, during her first appearance hearing, the judge identified Karen as a resource family parent for the children. The victim's sister, who stayed at Karen's home at one point, allegedly told police she thought her brother was about 11 years old when he started sleeping with his teacher in the same bed. According to the criminal complaint, the sister revealed the children would sleep in a shared room on the 2nd floor, but noticed her brother would be in Karen's bed the next morning. She also reportedly told officers that when her brother would shower, Karen would enter the bathroom and lock the door. In a text message to his sister, the victim allegedly admitted that he was the father of Karen's 5-year-old child and requested that it be kept secret. The victim's brother, who also stayed at Karen's home, allegedly witnessed Karen sexually assaulting his brother one time when they thought he was asleep. During an interview with the victim, police say the victim confirmed he had a sexual relationship with his teacher and that he was the father of her child. The victim reportedly said he was in contact with the teacher until his father made the Facebook post in December. When the district was first advised of the allegations, the staff member was immediately placed on and continues to be on paid administrative leave. Additional questions should be directed to Cape May County Prosecutor's Office. Karen is being held behind bars at the Correctional Center in Cape May. And it just kind of ends there. So here you go. This woman actually had a child with her 11-year-old student, whom she managed to move into her house. And so as I was about to record this video, this one popped up on my screen, and I can't tell you how many brothers asked me to cover it. All right. So this one, this is dated. This is, I'm looking at this from kplctv.com. This is actually dated February 27th. So this is just a few days ago, but I hadn't heard about it until brother sent it to me. And as you can see, mayor accused of raping Drunken 16-year-old at pool party ordered morning after pill on DoorDash. Right? Yeah. So that's what we're looking at. This is actually a mayor. So, we're already looking at teachers. We're looking at child caregivers. And apparently we're looking at mayors. And yet there's still not really a national conversation on the sexual vulnerability of boys. Now, obviously, I'm an advocate for Black men and boys. This video is not dealing with that. This is just dealing with women in general. And the incidents that I've kind of compiled here are all white women. But I still think it's important to just put on display. Now, I will say I've heard certain Black men say, well, Black women don't do this kind of thing. And I can tell you, I've been posting on my Facebook page since probably about 2009. There are plenty of Black women teachers who've done these kinds of things. I just didn't put them in this particular video, but this is not as uncommon as some of you might want to believe. So again, dated February 27th, the article reads in Derrida, I think this is Louisiana. Mr. Misty Roberts' son saw his mother having sex with his friend, he said in a 2025 interview shown in court today. Afterwards, he said he apparently told jurors he couldn't be certain that's what he saw. Interesting. Probably got hit with that guilt from his mother, but the jury is hearing from witnesses, including a man who said he delivered Plan B to the former mayor's door after her alleged sexual encounter with an underage boy. Roberts, 43, is accused of having sex with a teen at a party in 2024 while she was mayor of Derrida. Her trial got underway this week after numerous delays. This morning, the defense and prosecution questioned two forensic interviewers who had interviewed children connected to the case. One of them had interviewed 3 children, including the alleged victim, in July and August 2024. And the other had interviewed Roberts' children in March 2025 at the request of the district attorney's office. The jury also heard from a DoorDash driver who said he delivered an emergency contraceptive to Roberts' house. Prosecutors said Thursday that the alleged victim's mother texted Roberts to ensure that she was not pregnant, to which she replied that she was on birth control. She said Roberts shared a screenshot of the text in a group chat with her friends, suggesting she would also take Plan B. The driver testified that he accepted a request from Misty C to buy Plan B and leave it at Roberts' front door. He said he knew it was Roberts' house because he had brought his kids trick-or-treating there before. The driver said he heard rumors of Roberts' alleged crimes in the following days and believed that he had delivered the contraceptive for that incident. Jurors saw pictures of the 2024 party in question, including kids holding drinks by the pool, and a photograph prosecutors are calling lewd. That picture showed Roberts at the party in her bikini and the teen looking up at her smiling. The majority of their bodies were not visible in the photograph. Both of Roberts' children also took the stand. Prosecution called her son up first and began to review video of his interview with the Child Advocacy Center back in 2025. In that video, he claimed he saw his mother having sex with his friend through a crack in the window. Text messages between Roberts and her son were also presented by the prosecution, including what alcohol the kids wanted for the party. We also saw messages sent through the evening as Robert's son told her what was happening was crazy and that his little sister was crying. He also texted her he is 17, I guess about the guy she's having sex with. The victim of this case was identified as 16 at the time of the alleged crime. Robert's daughter also took the stand while her interview with investigators played. In it, she said she saw her mother and the young man on top of each other that night. Robert's nephew admitted to using his phone's camera to see what was happening in the room that night. He testified that he's unsure if he hit record, but said if so, it was never sent to anyone, and he's since wiped his Snapchat memories. The defense asked her nephew why he cleared his Snapchat before turning it over to investigators. He said it was because he had photos of him and his friends drinking and was worried he was going to get in trouble. He said that the intention was not to delete any evidence. That's actually exactly what you just admitted to. The defense implied in court that an important portion of the interview with Robert's son was not transcribed. Defense attorney Hasan Johnson said the interviewer said at one point, just say it once and we can move on, while the transcription notates that as unintelligible. Today, Robert's son agrees that's what was said. None of the 3 witnesses who testified today claimed to see any private parts of Roberts and the victim. The victim was shirtless, according to one witness, and that's where it ends. So here we have, I guess, the former mayor of Derrida, Louisiana. That's not a city I've heard of before, but this is the woman who apparently had sex with an underage boy at a party where she was serving alcohol that she purchased for the kids' consumption while she's out at the pool in a bikini. And then, of course, the next morning after she's had sex, she ordered Plan B to prevent a pregnancy. So this is what we're looking at. And these are common. I put these up on my Facebook page and my X page, on a regular basis. And there's been a steady stream of them in the last decade. So many of them, it's easy to lose count. And now, one of the things that we've talked about on this channel here before is the importance of a Black male political agenda. And this includes, agenda items that I think would be useful to men as a whole, and not just, white men or whatever, or just one group of men, or even just Black men. But here it is, 19-point Black male political agenda. All you gotta do is go to newblackmasculinities.wordpress.com and you click the pinned article at the top, and here it is. You scroll down a little bit, you can see it was updated. It was originally posted in 2020, updated as early as, or as late as January 23rd of this year. And you can kind of see it go from there. This is the streamlined list. You can click on any of these, but we're going to go to the false accusation offender registry. And basically what this does is it just highlights the need for documentation. All right. We know that there's no problem documenting men who've committed some kind of act, but we advocate for those who commit false paternity, child molestation, child abuse, so on and so forth, sexual assault, particularly of underage individuals, but of anybody, that they should be actually listed in this offender registry. And the reason for that, in general, is really designated for those committing false accusations, is because there needs to be documentation. Now, I show this just to remind my audience that this is here, but obviously it doesn't apply to the cases that I've just read off. What needs to happen, however, is one, we need to make sure that these women actually make the list, because there's evidence that a lot of the time they don't. Right? Even though they may find themselves in court, they'll often just get their hands slapped. They'll often get probation, and maybe have to clean up at the side of highways or whatever, but they often don't get the same kind of treatment men do when they're found guilty of the same crimes. So we want to make sure that these women who are committing these acts are getting the book thrown at them in as much as any man who's committing the same, right? But at the same time, this is what I mean by a feast of flesh, because for many of these women, they know that accountability is lessened when it comes to them. I think many of them are quite comfortable with what they're able to get away with. And I think that needs to change. But this one is, really focused on white women, because I think they engage in these acts in the highest numbers. And that's not necessarily because other groups of women are more moral. I think it might just be a population size issue, but it is nonetheless something that occurs. So give me your thoughts, and most particularly, if you've had any similar experiences that you can point to, where this is something you've you witnessed, something you participated in, something that happened to you. Give us your stories, talk to us about what you've seen. And remember, and I've talked about this in the last video where I was covering underage abuse of boys in particular. If you haven't checked out Tommy Curry and Ebony Utley's essay, She Touched Me, where you really look at how Black males have the youngest sexual debut, meaning they lose their virginity at the youngest ages, and the majority of that is to older girls and women. Go look at that paper and revisit some of these topics. It doesn't just happen to Black boys, but I think it happens to Black boys more than any other group of boys, and we definitely don't like to talk about it. Nevertheless, appreciate your support. Give us your story. Holla at y'all later.